I've been thinking about the local election results for the last couple of days, and the conclusion that I've come to is they're screwed. Both of them, Labour and the Tories. They are now facing extinction level events, primarily because of traps set for them by Tony Blair a couple of decades ago. I'll put two charts up now for you to take a look at, and one of them is the results of the 2024 general election. The other is the results of what would be a general election if one were to be called now, based on these local election results. And what do you notice? Well, if we had a general election right now and that data continued from the local election results, there's no more Labour, there's no more Tories. It's just Reform and Lib Dems. Of course, that doesn't include Scotland, so that is a whole different set of data to add into the picture. But wow, how astonishing is that? These two parties, they're toast. So what is going on here? Well, let's start with the Tories. Of the 1,600 council seats that were up for grabs, the Tories managed to lose 635 of them. They lost 70% of their councillors, which is worse than their worst predictions. Not only that, it's the worst result for the Conservatives ever since the inception of their party. Process how bad that is. If that doesn't convince you, then take that data that I talked about at the start of the video, extrapolate it to now. How many seats do you think that the Tories would have if a general election were called today? Well, based on that data, it's not 80, it's not 60, it's not 40, it's not even 20. They would be left with 12 MPs. Okay, not quite 0 seats, but so close that does it really matter at that point? This is utter decimation. They are dead in the water. Now, I'm going to make the modest assumption that you agree with me. This is a terrible result for the Tory party. So what exactly do you think Kemi Badenoch has come out and said about all of this? Well, she said she won't chase reform to the right. Look, getting a very bad set of results is one thing, but refusing to reflect on why you got those results, why voters are saying no to you and yes to the Reform Party, why the voters are pushing to the right, if you're not even willing to listen and have discussions and entertain the fact that actually maybe you should be more right-wing than you are, that's a real problem. But Kemi, she's not listening. Instead, here's what she said.
Do you think it's feasible that Nigel Farage could be the next Prime Minister?
As I've said, anything is feasible.
So
Anthony Albanese said, people were writing him off. He's just won a landslide. But my job is to make sure that he does not become Prime Minister because he does not have the answers to the problems the country is facing.
Blah, blah, blah. It's my job to make sure that Nigel Farage doesn't become the Prime Minister. Well, you're doing a great job, Kemi. Yeah, you're doing a fantastic job because Reform are absolutely soaring in the polls and you are absolutely tanking. If that really is your job, to make sure that Nigel Farage doesn't become Prime Minister, then you are doing such a bad job, you better relinquish it and fast. In fact, Kemi Badenoch seems to be the only Tory not in panic and crisis mode right now. And ordinarily, I would say, if you have a party leader who isn't prone to panicking, that's a good thing. But when the ship is heading towards an iceberg, you've got to take drastic action and you've got to do so quickly. Look, I take everything that Nigel Farage says with a heavy pinch of salt, something I recommend that you do as well. But when he says that the Tory party will never recover from this, I kind of agree with him. And let me tell you why I don't think the Tories will ever recover from this. It's not because it's technically impossible or because the numbers are just too difficult to overcome. No, it's because they don't have what it takes. They don't have the brains and they don't have the balls. All because of a trap that Tony Blair set for them 2 decades ago. And that trap was diversity, was multiculturalism, was when Tony Blair was pushing global Britain and the Tories ate it up. Instead of pushing back against it, because let's face it, it's like the least conservative position ever, they just ran with it, and they ran hard with it. They repeated the mantras back, diversity is our greatest strength. Think about this, at their last leadership election, they had the choice of putting Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch in, and they overwhelmingly opted for Kemi Badenoch, despite the fact that she's an immigrant to this country and spent the first 16 years of her life in Nigeria. How do you expect the average white, working class British man to be able to relate to someone who grew up in Nigeria? It's just bonkers, and it's not conservative. By the way, to anyone who thinks that that is in some way racist rhetoric, it really isn't. Let me give you this thought experiment. Imagine a 16-year-old Englishman emigrated to India or Nigeria. Do you think he's ever going to be able to become the Prime Minister or President of those countries? No, and that's not because they're racist, it's because he's not Indian, he's not Nigerian, okay? That's just reality. He spent the first 16 years of his life in England, he's an Englishman, why would they let an Englishman rule India? I mean, Yeah, that did happen in the past, but that wasn't their choice, okay? Anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked with that. I just know that someone is going to try and attack me for it. So what can the Tories do? Well, the Tories need to realise that they're not going to win the next general election. Nothing that they do is going to help them win the next general election. But that is not their current problem. Their current problem is survival, merely surviving. And the only way that I can see that they can do this is to push further to the right of reform. Now, in order to do that, take a tougher stance on things like immigration, you have to get rid of Kemi Badenoch. You can't say you've got a tough stance on immigration, but you have a first-generation migrant as the party leader. It just doesn't really make sense. It's just weird, right? So you have to get rid of her and put someone like Robert Jenrick in, but Robert Jenrick with a bit more oomph and a bit more right-wing rhetoric. Now, as I mentioned, this is probably not going to get you to win the next election, but hopefully you'll keep enough seats to keep the party alive. That should be your current focus, because if you really do drop down to 12 seats, it's over. So what kind of things could Robert Jenrick, the new leader of the Tory party, say? Well, he needs to say things like, every illegal migrant who's in the country will be deported. Okay, fine, easy enough. I'm going to put the Royal Navy in the Channel and we will turn back boats. Pretty strong rhetoric. No other party is saying anything like that. That will win over enough people, I think, to keep your party alive. And in the future, you can build from that. Another thing that I would probably do if I was Robert Jenrick and I was the leader of the Tories is I would make a deal with the electorate. I would say, if you elect me into government, I will call a general election within 2 years. So if you don't like what we're doing, the Tories, the next government, I will give you the choice to get rid of us in 2 years. You're basically taking me on a trial run and seeing if I'm true to my word. That's a really unique thing that's never been done in British politics before, but I think might win over a few voters. A lot of people will be like, I'm not putting the Tories in for another 5 years. Never going to happen. But if you're telling me you're going to do these things and you're asking me for 2 years so that you can prove it, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Food for thought. If someone at Tory party headquarters wants to hire me, email me. Now, don't think I've forgotten about Labour in all of this, because I haven't. Their losses in these elections might not look as bad, but they are. You see, all the way back in 2021, when Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister, the Conservatives did very well in local council elections, so they had more to lose. But actually, if you look at the percentage of losses, Labour got crushed just as much. They lost 70% of their seats. Really not good for Keir Starmer, and he's in a kind of different trap, I would say. The trap that he is in is that he's representing a generally left-wing party. But we've had left-wing parties for the past 30 years, and now all of the problems we have, well, they have right-wing solutions. So what does he do? He can't tack to the right, because if he does that, his own voter base and his own party will eat him alive. And he can't keep going to the left, because that's only going to exacerbate the problems. So his plan: keep going straight down the middle, but further and faster.
But the message from these results, I think, is go further, go faster. That chimes with what I want to do.
Now, personally, I don't think that Keir Starmer's strategy here is a particularly good one. Usually when I'm trying to do something, whatever it might be, and everything starts falling apart and going horribly wrong, I take a moment to pause and reflect and wonder if perhaps there is a better way that I could be doing it. But I guess Keir Starmer isn't going to do that. He's just going to bulldoze his way through, and what will be will be. Now take a listen to this. This is what one Labour MP had to say about the Labour Party, and this is fascinating. He said, this is Jonathan Hinder, by the way, too many working class people see Labour as the party of immigrants, minorities and those on benefits, asserting that the party urgently needs to correct course or risk losing connection with working class voters. And I would say that the Labour Party has already lost its connection with working class voters. Everyone can see that. The way that Jonathan Hinder, a Labour MP, describes the Labour Party is exactly how I view them. It's probably exactly how you view them as well. They lost the working class long ago, and they sort of replaced it with these client groups. They picked up like the Pakistani ethnic vote and things like that. But the working class, they've gone. They went to the Tories with Boris Johnson, and now they've gone to Nigel Farage with Reform. Labour doesn't have those votes anymore. Labour only got in because it was a protest vote against just how terrible the Tories were. But now they've got a new option: Reform. And that is where they've gone. And actually, this situation, when you really think about it, is even worse for Labour, because those groups, the immigrant groups that Labour had courted over many years and they were relying on for votes, Well, actually, in the last election, we saw that they're sort of not voting for Labour anymore either. They're starting to put forward their own candidates like Tahir Ali and Ayub Khan. And that is a trend that will continue into the future. They're going to get so big in some of these wards and constituencies that they don't need Labour anymore. They'll put forward their own guys and they'll get their own MPs to talk about cousin marriage and things like that in the House of Commons. Labour is kind of being devoured from all sides. Not good for them.
There's an interesting sort of dual story in the Sunday Times talking about how we're in this slightly perverse situation that Keir Starmer is being sort of more strong on Israel than Lord Cameron, our Foreign Secretary. Cameron calling for Palestine to be recognised as a state. Starmer's not willing to go that far. Is this going to cost Labour Muslim votes, do you think?
Well, it is already costing Labour Muslim votes, and Rochdale, the by-election in Rochdale, will be an interesting one to watch because George Galloway is standing there. So that will be so this month, and also other prominent Labour MPs are being challenged by Palestinian activists. The Sunday Times quotes a Labour MP saying that Cameron has, quote, outflanked us on Palestine, which they think is hemorrhaging both traditional Labour voters and Muslim voters.
By the way, there's even more local elections next year. So on the assumption that reform don't completely screw it up, I think there's more damage coming for the Labour Party. And if they get totally obliterated at those elections next year, then I do think Keir Starmer will have to step down. He will have to go. That will be the final straw that breaks the camel's back. They'll realise that he is not an election winner. He only got in because it was a protest vote against the Tories, and Labour will think we need something else. So they'll get rid of him. What comes after may well be worse. It may well be David Lammy as the Prime Minister, or Wes Streeting, or Jess Phillips, or Ed Miliband. God forbid. Please no. Who knows? Anyway, eagle-eyed viewers will notice that I'm not in my usual setting. I am somewhere else, that is true. And I don't have a puppy following me around everywhere, which is very sad. I had to say an emotional goodbye to her yesterday. I'll be back with her in a month or so, but I'm just going to do a bit of travelling and you'll get to see some cool places. I also will get to see some cool places, and I just think it'll be interesting. There's different things I can talk about when I'm in different countries and just sort of bring things to life. So yeah, if there's anything that you think is really worth seeing, particularly related to politics in Europe, let me know. I don't exactly know which route I'm taking or what my final destination is yet. I like to just wander and be a bit nomadic. I guess I'm kind of a hippie in that sense. I guess I'm a right-wing hippie. I don't know, whatever. But if there's something you think I should go and look at, just let me know and I will do so. I promise, by the way, Annie is in very safe hands. She's with my parents. They love her very much. She's got another dog as a friend. She's in a great place. She's going to get walks, love, probably too many treats. I'll get back. She'll be really fat. She's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, till the next one. Oh, and like, comment and subscribe. Thank you.